Between Awesome and Disaster. I'm your host, Will Carey. Thank you for tuning in as always. Happy New Year. It is 2019. This is our first episode of the new year, 2019. So I hope you guys are energized. You're making goals and plans because now's the time to do it. I appreciate you guys so much tuning in. It's been a few weeks with the holidays since I've brought you an episode, and I thank you guys for tuning back in. A couple of before we get in today's episode, and my guest today is a comedian, Brendan Eyre, who is a hilarious comic, and we had a really great conversation. If you are an aspiring comedian and you have questions, there are a lot of answers. I certainly had a lot of questions for someone like Brendan, who's a headliner and has performed on Seth Myers. He's performed on Comedy Central, and Brendan was very gracious with his knowledge and his experience in comedies. So it was great to talk with him, and it was really great to see him because I haven't seen him in a while. So it's a great episode that I'm excited to share with you. Other big news. I got engaged. My girlfriend and I we're engaged. We're getting married. That happened back in October of 2018, October 13th specifically. You might remember my last couple episodes. A few of them were released while I was in Southeast Asia, and I specifically asked her to marry me in Taiwan on top of a mountain called Elephant Mountain, and it was nerve-wracking but exciting, but ultimately magical. Like, I know that sounds very schmaltzy, like I'm writing Hallmark cards, but it really was like the kind of moment that me, as a hopeless kind of romantic who had been burned in previous relationships, that kind of moment that I was chasing. That's what when I asked my girlfriend, my now fiance, to marry me was. So I'll just tell you a little bit about it briefly. I had gotten the ring, and it was in my possession. I was hiding it to make sure she didn't see it, and I had it for a good portion of a week in Taiwan, and I had two different backpacks with me, so I would keep it in one big backpack, and I would keep it wrapped amongst some t-shirts and other things just to make sure that she wouldn't find it accidentally. And I had it with me the day that we were going to go climb Elephant Mountain. Now, proposing on top of a mountain is like one of those things that you hear about or maybe see in movies. The more practical considerations, and I'm working this out on stage, is that to propose on top of a mountain, you still have to climb a mountain. And I'm not in the worst shape of my life, but I'm not in mountain climbing shape. So about halfway up, we were both completely exhausted, but we soldiered on, and I wanted, because we had to get to the top. And then when you get to the top of Elephant Mountain in Taiwan, there's this picturesque rock that you can climb up, take the picture, because the entire skyline of the city and Taipei 101, the skyscraper, is in the background. And so we climb up the rock, and I keep my backpack with me, and then she gives her phone to a woman in line behind us, and then she takes the picture, and then I just pulled the box out, and I think my voice cracked. I said, "Will you marry me?" And she said yes, and my hands were shaking so bad that I couldn't put the ring on her finger because I was afraid I was going to drop it. So she grabs it, and then we kiss, and then everyone on the top of the mountain claps. So I'm very excited and happy that we are getting married. So that's my big life update in the end of 2018, and now we'll see what 2019 holds. And thank you guys very much for being here. You guys are my earliest supporters, so I thank you for being here now. And 2019, my goal is to bring you bigger guests, more episodes, and hopefully we can grow together. I'll grow, and then you'll grow with me. So thank you guys very much for listening. If you are a fan of the show and you want to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher, that is helpful. And if you just want to tell a friend about the show, if you think they might enjoy it, just say, hey, check out this podcast. I think you would dig it. That means the world to me that you would do that. So thank you very much. And let's get into my conversation with Brendan Eyre.
In their heart, I feel like they're 12. You know, they're like between 10 and 14 or 15, and they come home from school and they go on YouTube and they watch these YouTubers and they idolize them, and it's
right.
You know, so I don't think it's adults. YouTube, I don't think is really an adult format. It's just not. It's key. When they get the demographics for that stuff, it's a lot of kids.
Yeah, like teenagers.
Yeah.
I could definitely. That makes total sense.
And that's the way it's like, especially the stars, the YouTube stars. That's the way it's edited and presented. It's for people younger than us. Like, it's just quick cuts and just fragments of thoughts. And
exactly. It's very like disjointed. Like
it makes
like the quick edits that are all still in the same one shot.
Right. Yes, and it makes you feel, as an adult who's not used to that, it makes you feel a little crazy watching it, where you're just like, this is bizarre. You know, it's just like it doesn't feel real. Almost.
Yeah, it's like that. It's like a reality TV, like horror kind of editing.
Yes, exactly.
All those movies have like super quick cuts, and seemingly almost sometimes for no reason.
Right.
But like compared to like older movies where you would have like long tracking shots or like things that are shot in like 70mm, where we're like, did you ever see The Hateful Eight?
No.
So I saw it in like 70mm, and it was like about another 20 minutes longer than the regular version is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just because Quentin Tarantino was like, I'm going to shoot in 70mm, so we're going to take 6 minutes to just zoom out on this statue at the beginning, because I'm shooting in 70mm and I can do the format. But that's rarely done now.
Maybe I did see The Hateful Eight.
Yeah.
What was it about?
Bunch of people end up snowed in a haberdashery.
Oh yes, I saw it. Yes, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I thought it was great, and it has a lot of these. The 70mm version has a lot of these huge sweeping shots, just because he can.
Oh, interesting.
It's like a different take on the medium, which I don't know anyone on YouTube that's doing that.
No, definitely not. No,
I just don't think it's as applicable as much. But I'm curious, because when we reached out a little bit, like you wanted to, because the reason I reached out to you is because I like to talk about mental health also. So when you were younger, we were talking about like, you know, stuff that holds a place in your heart when you're young. What were those things for you when you were a kid?
Well, it's interesting. Like, I missed out in some ways on a lot of like my mom was very big on like, go outside, like go play outside. Like, I don't want you watching TV. I don't want you playing video games. So I missed out on a lot of like cultural touch points. Mm-hmm. Like I was a big reader.
Yeah.
And I was a big like playing outside. So I didn't have like, you know, so many of my friends. So what's so common amongst comedians, I find, is like wrestling fans. There's a ton of wrestling fans.
Yes.
I wasn't allowed to watch wrestling, and I didn't watch wrestling, so I never. And even when I was like a little bit older and could watch wrestling if I wanted to, I found the predetermined outcome of it to spoil it for me. Like, I knew it was fake, and I'm not taking away from people who like wrestling. Like, it's an impressive athletic feat.
Oh, very much so.
But the fact that it wasn't a real competition bothered me. So I didn't really have these pop culture touchstones. Like a huge thing for me was I think I was probably in like fifth or sixth grade, and I got this great big brown. I don't think it was leather, but it was this great big brown hardcover. I got it used at like a library sale. I got the complete Sherlock Homes. And I would read that just over and over again. I loved it so much. I loved it so much, and I loved Arthur Conan Doyle, and I loved Sherlock Holmes so much. It was so interesting to me. I was so fascinated by just this character, this man who was like flawed. Like he wasn't. He wasn't. I think that was maybe the first time I saw a hero who was like, Sherlock Holmes. He did cocaine.
Is he a cocaine addict in the
he's
the
a
books?
cocaine addict. He's not particularly nice.
Right.
He's clearly, in hindsight, he's clearly somewhere on some either autistic or some he's got some issues happening where he's clearly at least OCD or something like
right. He's flawed.
He's flawed, and I loved it. I loved that. I used to like I read a lot of like Agatha Christie. I liked I loved mysteries and stuff like that. So I was always reading stuff that I think was a little above my head. Like I would get my hands on books like in fifth grade or fourth grade or sixth grade, like stuff that was for older people, and I would read it.
Maybe like at a high school level while you're in school.
Yeah, and so those were kind of my touch, what I really identified with and like held close to my heart. So I missed out on like. Not fully. Like I was aware of things. Like it's not like I didn't know about Nintendo.
Right, but you're there's like a language to those things like wrestling or video games that you're not versed in.
And I knew enough about them, and like I enjoyed going to a friend's house and playing video games. I knew who the popular wrestlers were. I just didn't like it. Like I knew who the Ninja Turtles were. It wasn't like it's not like I was like in a cabin in the woods.
Right.
Like
I hear what you're saying.
I was just more sort of encouraged. I wasn't like a latchkey kid, I was more where I was just raised by the TV. I was more like encouraged, like my mom was just kind of big on being like, you're not going to sit around all day and watch TV. Like, go outside, figure out something to do, and or
go use your imagination.
Or read a book. Like you're not, you're so. Which I think it served me well,
Well, you're being exposed to like. Certainly a more, especially with Sherlock Holmes, I would imagine a more complex kind of narrative, and especially it's interesting to me that you were initially attracted to like mystery novels. Could I also ask you, did you either when you were a kid or later on, do you have any sort of interest in like true crime at all?
Yes, very much so. I'm trying to think if I did as a kid.
Because like I really late at night would after my parents would fall asleep, I would watch like medical detectives and forensic files, and I would start thinking, oh no, it can't be that person, and I'd start learning about like DNA, and then I was afraid that like a few too many episodes had like parents killing their kids, so I'd get paranoid that my parents were going to kill me.
Right.
And I learned to never buy life insurance.
Yeah,
because they will kill you for your life insurance.
Right. Well, another thing I learned. And I'll like scream it at the TV when I watch Dateline, even though I'm like, I don't know why I'm like sticking up for a murderer, but I will yell at the TV, "Shut up and ask for a lawyer," because they literally never do. And
no, they
like,
never do.
They always like get it. So often they give themselves away, not through a direct. Admission,
they say
but
enough.
they just say enough where they dig themselves a hole, and it's like, no, it's better to just look suspicious and ask for a lawyer and say nothing.
Yeah.
But you'll look suspicious, but they won't be able to prove anything. But they always want to. Everyone thinks they can sort of talk their way out of it, you know. And it's like
everyone thinks like they're a superhero. Or
something. Which I mean, you know, good. I'm glad a true murderer doesn't ask for a lawyer. I'd like for them to be in jail, but
yeah, exactly. I think it's Tom Segura has that great joke about the first 48 where. The one time he saw someone go, "Can I talk to a lawyer?" The police are like, "Fuck!"
Yeah.
And he's like, "All charges were dropped."
Yeah.
You'd think that these kinds of shows have been playing enough that you'd think people who commit crimes watch them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I feel like there were a couple articles about CSI when it started getting popular that like, well, criminals are watching CSI and they're getting better.
Right.
The reason I ask is because I feel like there's a natural jumping off point between like fiction mystery and true crime, which is like, I guess the difference between like, I make this analogy a lot. Like when I was young, the stuff for me was punk rock music.
Yeah.
And my gateway drug was Blink-182.
Right.
But through them, I found out all their favorite bands, and I found out about like Minor Threat and the Descendants. I compare it to like frappuccinos at Starbucks, and then eventually you're going to like local coffee shops and getting pour over.
Right.
Like
yeah.
Like true crime's like the hard shit.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I'm fascinated by subcultures. So like, I do like true crime. I like Forensic Files. I like Dateline. I like reading about. There's a website that's just kind of like an article aggregator called longform.org, I believe. And they have various sections, and one of the sections is crime, and it's just long form magazine articles about real crimes. It's very interesting. I think I've read all of them, so it's like no good to me anymore. But I love that stuff. But right now I'm on a big fascinated by life in prison. It's very interesting to me. So I end up watching a lot of. I read articles, but there's this whole sort of culture. There's like 5 or 6 really popular guys that just make YouTube videos where they answer questions about their time in prison, and it's really It's really fascinating to me. It's really interesting.
That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's this culture, like to really hear the truth about what life is like in an American prison. It's just fascinating. It's just an entirely different world, and it's like, it's completely race based. You know, so like, I think you have this idea. I at least had this idea from watching movies and TV that you had to join your race's gang, you know, and it's like, it's not necessarily that. Like you can do that, but also you're automatically with your race. Your race takes care of you, and you have to. They discipline you if you break the sort of unwritten rules of prison.
Yeah.
Your own race will discipline you, and you have to do the things your own race asks of you if they come to you. So it's you don't necessarily have to. So if you're white, you don't necessarily have to join the Aryan Brotherhood,
right? Yeah.
Or try to. But they are in charge, and they are in charge of all the whites. Yeah, you are in line. That is like, no matter what if you or I went in there, 2 guys who are not racist people. Yeah, it doesn't matter. We're still under the umbrella of the Aryan Brotherhood or whatever the white gang is in that prison. It's usually the Aryan Brotherhood.
Yeah, usually.
But it's really interesting, and there's rules about where you can socialize with other races. Like it's like, playing cards, that's fine. You can play cards with other races. Like you can play basketball with other races, but it's like, don't you dare go into another race's cell. Like don't take food off another race's tray. Like there's all these weird rules. It's I just find the whole thing fascinating.
Yeah. I do too. Like there's that sense of tribalism on a very basic level, and I feel like that is the most basic level is, other than maybe sex, is just dividing people up by race. Like that's sort of like those like base survival instincts are on full display in prison, and to a much lesser extent. But I feel like since the last presidential election, outside it's kind of similar tribal lines. There's like you're with us or you are with them, and there's no gray area.
Yeah, I've become a little lost in terms of what's going on because
I think you kind of have to, otherwise you'll just be sad all the time.
well, I don't mean lost in terms of following. I mean lost in terms of understanding because for a while it was very easy for me to just say there's a lot of dumb people in this country, and that's why Trump won.
Right.
But I'm on the road a lot, and especially I had some health problems last year, but this year I'm back. I'm back on the road, and I've been out on the road a lot, and I meet people, and I've met people that are funny, nice, seemingly intelligent, kind-hearted people.
Right.
That are Trump supporters. So that makes when that happens, that then all of a sudden that complicates things for me because then I'm like, well, what's going on? Like what? How can you not see? How can you not look at this man and see that not only is he A, incapable, he's B, a bad person. Like I just don't.
Right.
It's just beyond me but I meet these people and they're good people.
Yeah.
So there's something bigger happening where it's like,
and these are people that come out to your
they come to the shows
and
or like
they're like probably enjoying the show.
Yeah, or like I've met some, when I do morning radio to promote a show, I've met some DJs who are like super nice, funny, intelligent guys, and I see like Trump stickers on their desk, that kind of thing. Well, I don't really talk about politics in my act, but like, or like a club owner who's like nice, been nice to me all week, had interesting conversations, great stuff, and I'll see like a Trump sticker on their car, like that sort of thing, where I'm like, okay, I can no longer use the excuse that it's just idiots. Like there's something bigger happening, which is disturbing. Like, and I don't know if it's just such a feeling of being left out of the process that these people just are willing to allow themselves to be duped by this con artist into thinking he's the outsider, he's the maverick. Like I don't know what it is, but it's disturbing. It was a lot more pleasant when I could just say it's a bunch of idiots.
Only idiots.
Yeah.
But then that complicates it when like you're actually going and meeting nice, kind-hearted people that are on board, and for whatever reason. And I am not the kind of confrontational person. I wouldn't imagine you are either, who's going to like challenge someone on why they think that. I would just kind of be like, oh, okay, I don't agree, but I'm glad you're at the show.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I like as someone who I don't have a day job, so like I don't really have the luxury of being
blowing it up and being hyper partisan,
being like a hardline political comic, because I'm a low level headliner. So they can just very easily. I don't sell tickets. You know what I mean? They have me there because they can pay me not that much.
Right.
That's
you're
why.
Doing like and I will say this compared to where I'm at, compared to where you are, I think what you're doing is awesome. So I'm gonna say I'll say that to you now. Like, so you're like doing like the Thursday through Sunday and like getting like the minimum wage version of what
I'm a low level headliner, which clubs need. Like they do need that. They can't. Very few clubs can book a draw every week. Right. Like they try, but they don't always do. So when they can't book a draw, the next best option is a guy whose rate is low, who's me. Who's new enough at headlining that they can pay me the minimum headliner wage. They know I'm not going to sell tickets. Their promotion is on them.
Right.
You know, I sell a few tickets based on the podcast, but not many. And so I can't really afford to alienate people. So and anyway, I don't think I would anyway, just because I've always been sort of a silly comedian. I care very much about politics, but it's never really worked its way into my comedy.
I know exactly what you mean. Like, I try to read the stuff. I try to be informed and like think about it, but I just never have anything funny to say. God bless comics who can be political and be funny. It's not my forte.
Yeah, and I think both of us probably could if someone hired us to write for the Daily Show, we'd figure it out. But it's just not. It's just not what. It's just not. When I sit down to come up with a joke, it's not what I find the funniest. It's just not my style. So, so even if I could, I wouldn't. So it's not a big deal. But I see people do it sometimes. I see people do it. I was in Minneapolis and someone had a anti-Trump. Somebody who was opening for me had an anti-Trump joke. I can't remember the joke. And Minneapolis is a pretty liberal town. But they got like shouted down by a Trump person in the audience, which is like.
And it's like how much there's like a risk versus reward kind of equation that I at least think about is like, is this going to go over well enough where if someone shouts out, I'll be able to keep the show going, or am I going to like disrupt am I changing anyone's mind with this joke? Probably not.
Right.
I want to get back just real quick. We were talking about prison, and I want to kind of follow like the path through to where you are now. Do you listen to Beautiful Anonymous?
No.
Chris Gethard's podcast?
No.
There is an episode, if you're into prison, you would be really interested in it. He called this woman. She left a voicemail on the show. And they talked 4 days before she was turning herself in to serve a 4-year prison sentence on drug charges.
Oh, wow.
And then he has this other series called Beautiful Follow-Ups where he called her from prison. They could only talk for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. Like, she tells how deep into selling drugs she got and like just the absolute sheer insanity of it. And then she talks about her realities, like where she is now. There's another podcast that was done by an actual prison inmate. I can't remember the name of it, but I'll get it for you. So I'm curious, Brendan. We seem to both have this shared because I know you're from rural suburban Ohio. Also.
No, I'm from Cleveland. So
you're from Cleveland.
City. I'm from Cleveland Heights, which they call it's called an urban suburb. They call it. It's sort of like on the fringe of Cleveland proper.
Gotcha. So I grew up in a suburb of DC, about an hour south of DC. So, and we seem to both share this kind of fascination with, I guess, darker subjects. So how did we become comedians?
Well,
did you have you say you didn't have a huge education in in pop culture, but did you have that initial exposure to comedy?
I did. You know what? I really liked. I really liked a lot of black comedians. There were two factors. I had a friend that had these old Def Jam VHS tapes. And so I'd watch just black comedians from the early '90s, and just like I thought it was so pure. Like there was something about these audiences were just like electric.
Yeah.
Electric. Like the performers were causing these audience to lose it, And it was there was something about that I was like, this is amazing. Like they're causing people to like explode in emotion. They're orchestrating people's emotions. Like it was it was beautiful to me. like amazing. And these are we're talking like if we went back and watched these, like most now there's some good comedians on Def Jam, but if we went back and watched these, a lot of it would be like hack, horrible
we wouldn't
stuff.
we wouldn't be saying, well, that's a very well constructed,
no. It was just like, you know, stuff and I didn't know at the time, but a lot of it was probably hack, you know, really kind of stuff
but it
that
isn't
had been done, but it wasn't. But it was new to me, and it was amazing to me. Like I remember one time, this guy like heckled Martin Lawrence, you know, and he said, "Can somebody put something in that guy's mouth? My zipper's stuck," you know, and the audience went fucking nuts, nuts. And I was sitting there like, he's a genius. Like, he's a genius.
Right,
and, like, now I know that's sort of like a hackneyed line. That's like an old line, you know?
Yeah, that's like a stock.
That's
like,
a stock.
Shut the fuck up.
Yes, that's like the, like, do I come to your work and knock, you know, whatever
knock the
that.
dick out of your mouth.
Yeah, that's a stock line. But I didn't know that at the time. So I'm like, this is incredible. And then the other, my other major influence was I would see Mitch Hedberg on Comedy Central.
I love him,
and he for me that was like I just couldn't get enough. I couldn't because, and I still love. He'll always be my favorite because you know he suffered from stage fright, and I have stage fright. So that really I really oftentimes before a show, or especially if it's a big thing, or the few times I've been lucky enough to be on television, and I'll be there, and I'll be getting very nervous, and I'll be getting, you know, the stage fright will be kicking in. I'll think of him, and I'll think, you know, like, well, he had stage fright. He was scared the whole time, and he did it, and it was fine. So it's going to be fine. You know, like, it just...
Mitch did this 15 times. He did Letterman 15 times.
Right. So what I love about him, what I think is so impressive about him is for a one-liner guy to listen to... So take Dimitri Martin, right?
Another guy I really like.
I really like Dimitri Martin. And there was a time where I was super fascinated with Dimitri Martin. And his new special, I think, is great. But I watch Dimitri Martin, and I watch a half hour of Dimitri Martin, or I listen to a Dimitri Martin album. I come away from it feeling like those were good jokes, but I don't really know Dimitri Martin.
Yeah.
Whereas with Mitch, somehow, even though he wasn't telling personal jokes, the jokes they're all fake, you know, but I mean, there's a few that touch on his personal life, but not really. Somehow, through his demeanor and through his delivery and through his vibe, you come away thinking, I know that man. I understand that man. Like, I got a glimpse inside of his brain. Like, even though...
You get an idea of the kind of person he is because you think like, oh, that's the brain who's thinking up those jokes.
Yes, and I'm not knocking Dimitri at all. To me, Dimitri, it's a little more sterile. I think he's like a fantastic joke writer. I just don't get the same level of, like, with Mitch, it was just like, somehow he told these things that weren't personal, but the sum of them was personal. Which was, I thought, was fascinating to me, and I don't want to say worship. That's a strong word, but I
understand what you mean.
I really idolize him. I really do, and it's funny because our comedy's not particularly similar. You know, I'm not a one-liner guy. I guess in a way, I'm an observational guy, so it's somewhat similar. But you know.
You're maybe in the same wheelhouse, but you're playing in a different key.
Yeah. Certainly playing in a lower league at the moment, but
just the fact that you headline around the country to me is just wonderful. So if you ever think, oh, what am I doing? Just know that Will Carey thinks you're doing great stuff.
Well, you know what, man? Like, I make my living doing an art that I like, so I
and isn't that that's like when I first moved to the city, that's all I thought about. That's all I thought about was like make a living doing the art. So that's like the fucking stop one on the Polar Express.
Yeah.
Man.
So I try and remind myself of that when I'm like, oh, I don't.
Second show Friday when you hear bachelor party.
Yeah.
Or bachelorette party.
Yeah. Or like, or I didn't make this list, or I didn't make that list, or I don't have a TV special coming up. I try and remind myself like, yeah, I don't have a day job anymore. I'm getting paid to do this. Like I'm lucky. I'm very lucky.
Yeah. That's awesome, dude. It's good to have that perspective.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's, and I'm not thinking anyone particular, there's comics like, why aren't I headlining this club? Why aren't I on Conan?
Yeah.
Why don't I have a Netflix special? Why am I not Kevin Hart?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm curious because I kind of want to trace this because the whole idea of like success in comedy to me at least, and like is still like I feel like I'm still like watching it through like a glass, through glass kind of.
Yeah.
Going back to the prison analogy.
Yeah.
Did you start comedy in Ohio or did you?
I did.
And where were the places you were starting?
I started in Cleveland. I started in open mics in Cleveland. I moved very quickly.
Uh-huh.
I moved to New York very early on. I think I was maybe a year in, maybe less, and I just moved because this other guy was moving to New York, and I was like, oh, I knew I wasn't good yet.
And was something about New York compelling you to go there because this guy was going there?
I was older, so I didn't start till I was 28. And so I had enough perspective, I think, to know. I understood what was happening. I understood. Okay, if this is going to be a thing, if I'm going to take a shot at this, really, if I'm truly going to take a shot at this, at some point I need to move to New York or LA.
Right.
I understood enough about the industry just by kind of studying it and looking at people that like. I mean, and that's not a hard and fast rule, but I'd say it's 90% accurate. You know, you could make it from other parts of the country, but it's rare.
Yeah.
It's rare. You know,
it's the exception is people who make it elsewhere.
Right. So, I knew that's what I wanted. I was lucky at the time, really lucky, to have this job that I wrote industrial reports. They were sort of these research reports about like industrial components, and they would be these massive, boring research reports about like ball bearings or like bolts.
Right.
But I was good at it, and it paid well, and my boss and my supervisor were awesome. And I was lucky enough to go to them and be like, look, I want to be a comedian. I'm going to move to New York. Can I keep doing this in New York? And they were like, yeah, as long as you hit your deadlines, yeah. And so I was lucky enough to be in New York and have this job where I worked from home making like pretty decent money, as opposed to so many of my friends were struggling with like dog walking, like being waiters or bartending, and then you run into, well, I got to work at night, so I can't do comedy. Where for me, I was totally free because I could go on the road at any time. I could do anything at any time because all I needed was my laptop to work. So I really owe a lot to this company. It was really great. It was really a ideal setup.
Yeah. God bless those good bosses.
Yeah, it was really an ideal setup. And then so I moved early on. And,
what year did you move?
It's 2019. Around 2010.
Okay, so about the same. I moved in June of 2010 as well.
Yeah, I think around 2010. And I would do. The first couple of years was so heavily those Eastville open mics. I would do open mics at Eastville Comedy Club. You'd pay $5 for a drink. And it seemed like, I don't know if my memory is serving me wrong, but it seemed like there were far fewer sort of independent Brooklyn mics than there are now.
I think that's definitely
because I remember
case.
being heavily reliant on, like, I would do the Eastville mics almost every day. They had a daily 6 o'clock mic, I think, or 5:30 mic.
Yeah.
And I would do them almost every day, and that's where I met my sort of crew, which was,
DeVito and
Anthony,
and
DeVito, Greg Stone, Doug Smith would be there. At the time, J.F. Harris, who since moved to L.A. Billy Princell was always there. Jared Freed was there. Michelle Wolf was there a lot. At the very beginning, Michael Che was there. But he very quickly became famous or became successful.
Right.
So, I would do that. I would do the mics were. And I don't want to be like a guy who's like.
I know what you mean. I remember my first. The second time I ever performed in New York before I moved was a bringer at Eastville.
Yeah.
And I was so new. Like Todd Barry did a guest set, and I was like losing my fucking mind.
Right.
So yeah. There's and I'm sure it still happens now. There's the phenomena of the you're just kind of sometimes you're just performing to a wall of apathy.
Right.
And that's just kind of the nature of how everyone's feeling on that particular day. But what's important is, again, you're talking about like you're finding like you're making the friends. The friend part of it is important as well. Otherwise you just go home and cry every
right.
night.
And I don't necessarily think this is a good part, but it is helpful. You do that wall of apathy you talk about. I often wonder, was that worth it? Were those mics where no one was laughing, where everyone was just out of it and tired and done? So for those of you listening, oftentimes in New York City, as opposed to other cities, when you do an open mic, it's usually just comedians in the audience, as opposed to most cities, an open mic, there's real audience. But in New York, it's just comedians, and sometimes they're just not laughing. They're just tired. They're dead. And sometimes I wonder if it was that worth anything. But I do think there's something to be said for it hardening us. There's so much rejection in comedy and show business in general. Actors probably face it even more than comedians, but there's so much rejection that I do think to be tempered, to become hardened is important. To become, kind of inured to silence.
Yeah.
Is like there's something to be said for gaining that strength to say, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care that none of you laughed.
Oh my God, there absolutely is.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is. It's so important. It's like getting calluses when you start playing guitar.
Yeah.
Like your fingers hurt to begin with, but after a while, it doesn't hurt. Because I think there absolutely is to that. Just to know that you can tell a joke, have there be silence, and you will still be alive.
Right.
In the silence, or after you get off stage.
My very first open mic in New York City was the Woodshed. I don't know if you remember that. It was
I most certainly do. I started going when it was still hosted by Dan St. Germain and Mike Lawrence.
Yes, and it was notoriously mean. It was a notoriously mean mic. They would be openly mean to you. And I will say, I do think it drove a lot of people to become better joke writers because of the hostile atmosphere of that mic. But if you were new, and this still is true, if you're new and you come to a city and you're brand new, people don't really give you the benefit of the doubt. You got to prove yourself. People come and go in comedy so much that you have to sort of prove that you're going to stick around before people are willing to really give you their full attention. I
agree.
found, like a guy who just moved here, people will laugh, but they're not gonna give you the same attention they'd give, Will or I, who have been here for a long time,
Yeah.
So I went to the Woodshed, and my first mic I've ever done in New York, and I found it on badslava.com,
Yep.
which I don't even know if that still exists. But
I think it does, but I haven't checked it recently.
and I showed up, and I've got all my A jokes from Cleveland, the best ones,
Gotcha.
the best ones. And I go up there, and man, I did not get a noise, not even not a single noise, no, not a giggle, not a guffaw, dead silence for the whole time. And I remember walking out and just being looking at the sky and like in a daze, just being like, I gotta move home. I can't do this. I can't do this. That I thought I could do this. I can't do this.
Right.
It's just so brutal. And then it's like, well, you just keep doing it. And then
Eventually you do. And yeah, I had that same experience. For me, it was because I would go to the Woodshed intermittently, but for me, it was the creek. I felt like for the longest time when I was at the creek, and again, for anyone who's listening who's not familiar with New York, the creek and the caves, I don't want to say I don't know if it's legendary just yet, but it's an important venue for up-and-coming New York comics where you can do open mics for free and you can produce shows for free. And the owner, Rebecca Trent, wonderful, I find a very wonderful lady. So this place, there's a fraternity around. And again, you got to show that you're serious. So I probably went to the creek for 3 years and I just felt like a kid on his first day at a new school for 3 years. I would just walk around and no one would talk to me.
Yeah.
And I would go home and I would go back and then I would take the G train back to Sunset Park. But I can't remember exactly when it happened, but eventually, when you're around for a while, we're kind of talking about this idea of eventually, you prove your mettle.
Right.
Kind of. So that's what it was for me. But again, talking about I'm kind of glad I went through that too, because there's that sort of hardening quality.
Yeah, right.
That probably comes in handy. I imagine second show Friday night at the Funny Bone when when you got to wrangle people.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I like I really enjoy that aspect of comedy. A lot of comedians hate it. Most comedians hate it. But the sort of dogfight with a drunken audience and wrangling hecklers and stuff like that, I really enjoy. I like that. I like to make it I like to bring it to the edge of falling apart, but still being in control.
Right.
I like that. I generally will tell bouncers, I'll give you a nod if I need you. Otherwise, let me handle it.
Okay.
Because I like to handle it. I usually can handle it. I like it.
Well, it's kind of a rush, right, to know that you might go off the rails at any second.
Yeah, I love that. And it's like a stunt pilot, It's like a guy nosedives a plane and then pulls it back up, and everyone's like, "Holy shit, how'd he do that?" And it's like to take the show where it's like everyone's like, "Oh my god, this is falling apart," and then I control it back. I take control back, and it's like an ego thing, where it's like I'm in control here. I'm conducting what's happening here.
Yeah.
You might think you are, but I am.
Yeah. Do you have any particularly memorable moments where you've really just lassoed a heckler and then left him oh, how are all four of my limbs tied up?
Not I think what the average non-comedian doesn't understand is that a heckler, the stereotypical, movie heckler,
The you suck.
The you suck
Yeah,
that guy
doesn't happen very
doesn't
often.
exist. Very, 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 very rarely. Sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And if he does, a lot of times it's because you suck. You know? Like,
Yeah.
if you're good, that's not going to happen. What's much, much, much more common is just drunken interruptions. And
Yeah.
and we consider that heckling. Oftentimes, those people, they don't even realize that's considered heckling. They think they're like helping you.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Like, and so that's far more common. Is just a drunk person wanting attention, wanting to interrupt you, wanting to become part of the show, and you just have to gauge. Like, I don't really have any crazy stories of I'm not, like, unless someone gets
Hostile.
which they rarely do. I'm not going to get hostile back at you. I just am not. That's not I don't that makes me uncomfortable, and I think oftentimes that makes the audience uncomfortable. Like, I'm never going to be one of these, like, shut the fuck up, you cunt. You know, like, that's not me. That's not me. I'm going to talk through it with you and gently make fun of you and ask you to, if you could do me a favor and be quiet for a little bit, you know, like, but I had a situation that bothered me. It bothered me a lot, actually, because I've been sober since I was 23. I had a drinking problem and I had a drug problem.
And how old are you now?
I'm 36. So 13 years. So I've been.
Way to go, man.
Thanks. And I haven't. I have not been in a fight since I've been sober. I mean, I take jiu-jitsu classes and I box and I fight with my classmates, but I haven't been in a fight since I was sober. I fought when I was younger. I fought a lot, and when I was a drunk, I fought a lot, and it was funny because I kind of always thought, like, it's just part of life. You fight a lot, and then as soon as I got sober, it turns out it's incredibly easy not to fight.
Oh my God, so easy.
Turns out it's very simple to just not fight someone.
And you think that was the drugs and the booze that were maybe making you think?
For sure. Well, when I was younger, it was more because I just grew up around a group of kids who, like, fighting was kind of common, and it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't really a big deal. It was like, I just never, like, sometimes I'll meet people, or like my girlfriend, for instance. Violence is like so like shocking to her, and just abhorrent, and like I haven't fought in a long time, and I don't condone it, but it also doesn't, like, I just grew up where it wasn't that big of a deal. Like, sometimes you disagreed with a guy and you guys fought, and then it was okay. You know, like, nobody really, like, I don't know, like a fist fight, nobody really dies, you know, like, it's fine. Like, but that being said, I would prefer not to fight, and I don't fight now. And I was doing a set on the Lower East Side, and it was the crowd, because of the one of the producers of the show works in fashion, and so the crowd was a very sort of high-end fashion crowd.
Okay.
They were fashion people.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
They were fashion people. They were very chatty, and they were it was a good show. It was a good show, but they were chatty and sort of entitled, and they seemed sort of rich Lower East Side kids, you know? And I was in a bad mood. And I also had a conversation that day on the phone with my mom that was a very important and, like, touching conversation with my mom. And I'm doing a joke. I hadn't said anything about my mother. It hadn't come up. I do have a joke with my mom in it, but I hadn't done that joke. I hadn't said anything about my mother. And this girl in the back goes, "Is your mother a whore?" And I was like, "Excuse me?" and she wouldn't engage.
Right.
I goes, what? I go, why would you say it? Excuse me? She wouldn't engage. So
Wow. That's ballsy to throw out something like that.
well, so I had gotten the light, and so I close, and it closed. It was good. It closed well, and they're laughing. But as I'm closing, I'm getting angrier and angrier.
Right.
Because I'm like, that's not a heckle. Like that's just like what a rude thing to say, you know? And so after I get off, I go up to this woman. I go, why would you say that? I go, why in the world would you say that about my mother? And she goes, I didn't say she was a whore. I asked if she was a whore. And I was like, that's fucking semantic. What are you talking about? That's such a rude fucking thing to say.
Yeah.
And her boyfriend goes, why don't you get the fuck out of her face and stop talking to her? And I was like, okay, I will stop talking to her. I'm talking to you now. What the fuck is wrong with her? And like I was losing. I lost my. It was I hadn't lost my temper in so long. And so.
But I can. I'm like right there with you. Just
yeah. I just
manic spiral.
It was just, you know what it was. It was like I had been building up feelings of sort of resentment against like entitled like New York, like young New York people.
Oh yeah,
and like
people who have had like the cushy experience of New York.
Yes. Yeah. I've been building up this resentment towards those people where it's like, who do you like everywhere in the country. There's very few places in the country where you can go and not realize that if you call someone's mother a whore, it's going to be a fucking problem. You know, like to like, think it's just fine to yell that at a person is so ridiculous. And so,
yeah, it's like anywhere else, you're getting beat up,
right? And I'm not going to hit a girl,
of course.
And I don't want to hit anyone. I just am losing my temper, and I was so embarrassed later because I hadn't lost my temper like this in a while. So, they do trivia on this in between comics at the show, and one of the hosts is saying like, this bridge between here and here was named after blank or something like that, and as he's silently waiting to hear the crowd answer, you just hear me in the back to the boyfriend, I'll smash your fucking face. And then like and then other comics luckily came over and kind of pulled me away, and I was glad, and I was so embarrassed because I hadn't lost my temper in so long.
Yeah.
But then the next day, and I wrote this apology to the hosts and to the comic that had to follow me because I made a scene, you know, and I was very embarrassed. It's not who I want to be. It's not, you know, it's kind of who I was when I was drinking it maybe, and it's not who I want to be. But then the next day, I like called all these older comics that I admire, and every single one of them was like, "No, man, like that's not a heckle. Someone called your mom a whore. They deserve to be yelled at. And if the boyfriend then yelled at you, he deserved to be yelled at also. Like you're fine." And so, like all these people kind of affirmed me, like, no, there's times in life where it's okay to get really mad and threaten people, like, and when someone calls your mom a whore, that's one of them. Like, you did okay.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right.
Yeah, you didn't hit.
I didn't hit anyone.
Hit the guy.
Yeah,
so
I didn't hit anyone.
Yeah, I would say that's the best way to handle it.
Yeah, I was glad. I'm very glad I didn't hit him. I would have been. That would have.
Yeah, that's just a whole, like everyone thinks about. Everyone's so like everyone who thinks they're like so tough is like, oh, I kick anybody's ass. Well, you know, you're probably going to get charged with something, and then it becomes a whole like situation.
Or
so did you
get sued? Any number of things. I mean, it's just not worth it as an adult.
Oh, 100%. So this is almost like a. So you said you had like anger issues. So but that incident almost sounds like the healthy result of someone who's confronted their anger and now knows how to management. Did you have problems with that when you were?
I did.
Younger?
Yes, just when I was drinking, I did. But I don't think that incident was really the healthy result. I don't, because I think had other comics not pulled me away, I don't quite know what would have happened. I'd like to
Right.
think it wouldn't have escalated to violence, but I don't know that it wouldn't have. So despite a bunch of comics telling me that was fine, I still personally don't feel great about that incident. I
Right.
wish I would feel better, and going forward, I still think that is worth addressing, but I think I would have preferred to have said, "Hey, that's really rude to call someone's mother a whore," and then walked away. That's how I would have preferred to have resolved that.
Yeah.
But yes, I had a lot of anger issues growing up that didn't really show themselves in public too much. Just kind of internal anger issues and anger at home. And then when I was really in the depths of my alcoholism, which, I got sober when I was 23, so that's pretty early, but
Right.
I really would have public anger issues. With
Just kind of-
violence and
Yeah.
snap and
Just kind of feeding with like the lowered inhibitions of the.
yeah, and I think it was really related to my depression. It was really taking out
Yeah.
my anger at being depressed and anxious all the time. That would come out as anger.
Yeah, I definitely think that is. I agree with you completely, because like people who don't turn inward with their depression and get like super like shut in, or like that's what I tend to do. I tend to retract when I get sad.
Yeah.
The other way it comes out is through anger, because
Right.
it's like. And I can't speak for you, but like there's always these hidden insecurities or fears that you're kind of always carrying. And I think comedians have a lot of them. There's this sort of
Absolutely.
like, am I going to just keep doing open mics forever and working this job and working this day job?
Right.
I hate like all these unknown, uncontrollable factors.
Or even like the biggest one of all, am I funny?
Am I funny?
And that one, and we all have that
Yeah.
one. Like, am I funny?
Exactly. Am I funny? Is this joke funny? Do I need to keep working on this joke?
Right.
Is it the crowd? Is it the way I said it? Is it do I need to rewrite it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like your mind will explode with
Right.
all the different
Yeah.
non-quantifiable variables when it comes to performing the art of comedy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, well, let me think about how I want to phrase this. Did you have a moment or a realization when you were wrestling with all this stuff where you realized this isn't what I want to be? I've got to get help. How did you get sober? Did you go cold turkey, or did you do a AA or some other kind of program?
Yeah. Well, so, I did. What happened was, I never lost my moral compass. I never lost my values, but I became increasingly willing to act in defiance of my values. So I was just constantly in a state of guilt, because like I still had this moral compass. No, I still knew what was right and what was wrong. I just became increasingly willing to do what was wrong, and so I was
say
just
fuck it.
and so I was just constantly guilty, constantly guilty. And I was in very poor health. Like I drank nearly constantly. I was a daily weed smoker from the time I was 14. And I did a lot of cocaine. And I smoked a ton of cigarettes, like a ton of cigarettes.
Yeah.
I don't moderate well. So by the time I was 22, every morning I would wake up and I would spit blood into the toilet. And like I was so delusional that I remember thinking like, well, that's just part of getting older. You grow up, you spit blood into the toilet every morning. like,
Right. It's
really,
like, oh, yeah, everyone does that.
Yeah, everyone just spits blood into the toilet every morning. So it just was this steady decline where I was becoming more and more miserable, and like I couldn't stop drinking, and I ended up seeing a therapist who specialized in drugs and alcohol, and she guided me into a program. I'm not really supposed to talk about publicly.
Oh,
but,
yeah, don't, yeah.
But and it was very, very helpful to me, and I was lucky enough to get sober on the first shot, and I really just think that's luck. I mean, so many people struggle so many times, relapse so many times, and my heart goes out to them. I just happened to get lucky, and it just took the first time, and my life just really got better.
Yeah.
Like right
This
away.
is in New York. This happened?
No, this was in Cleveland. This was well before I ever did comedy. This was when I was 23.
Well, I'm glad that you got it's great that you were able to get a handle on it early, and that it took early, because again, makes the whole arc of your creativity just that much clearer. Like there's no like bad, like drunken bad sets where your reputation takes.
Sure. Well, and even more importantly than that, it's like getting sober young is such a blessing, because it's like, I didn't have kids to lose. I didn't have a wife to lose. I didn't have a house to lose. I didn't have. I don't have 3 children who fucking hate my guts because I was a drunk.
Totally.
That's the real blessing. It's like, but yeah, also the comedy thing. I don't know if I would have been able to do it drunk.
Yeah.
Because I didn't drink like a normal amount, if I drank, I was drunk, so
totally.
So I don't know if I would have.
Well, again, what a blessing to recognize it early and correct the problem.
Yeah.
And you said you've been sober 13 years.
13 years.
That's great, man.
Yeah, it's and it's nice too, because comedy now is not. It's not like the 80s. It's not where there's like cocaine in every green room,
Right.
Like there's a lot of sober guys, and even the people that aren't are pretty of course there's alcohol, a fair amount of alcohol around.
Sure.
And there's drugs around, of course, but it's not you hear stories of how it used to be, and it's just not like that anymore, where guys aren't constantly drunk or on drugs,
I know what you mean. I read JL Covan's blog sometimes, and he was talking about a recent gig he did in Minnesota, and like the feature brought like cookies from the local bakery, and I'm like, that sounds like a great show to be a part of.
Yeah,
I like that experience. Or even like because so much of outside of clubs, so much of us getting stage time early on is in non-comedy centric venues. I want to start, like if I produce a show again, I want to do it somewhere where I want to hang out. I'm not just going to try to find like a bar. But like I want to find like, I don't know, maybe there's like a coffee shop, or like my favorite bookstore will let me do stuff just so I could be there more.
I think a bookstore is a wonderful place for a comedy show. Like the problem is, I guess in New York, finding one with enough room,
Yeah.
But I know there have been some bookstore comedy shows.
Yeah. Well, my friend David Lawson, he's a storyteller. He runs a show at the Astoria Bookshop like monthly, and it's just like everyone comes in, tells a 5-minute long form story. Everyone's super chill. Everyone buys a book and goes home.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So I have a couple other things that I'm curious about. Just again, as my looking through the glass, I'm going to kind of see when. I'm curious when things started to kind of transition for you in terms of getting comedy being your full-time job. I'm curious about before I get to that. You've done Seth Myers. You did Seth Myers,
yeah,
right?
I did, yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit about the process of getting that, preparing the set, and then performing on the show?
I had a abnormal process. because I used to open, not a ton, but I used to open sometimes for Colin Jost, who's on
Weekend Update.
and
He's co-head writer also with Che,
yeah,
right?
yeah, and he was, he's been a writer there since I believe he was 22, and so he's very close with Seth. And I opened. He likes me, and I would open for him, and he was like, "You've never done comedy on TV?" And I was like, "No." And he said, "Oh, you got to do comedy on TV." And I said, "Oh,
I would like to.
Yeah, I said,
how do I do that?
Yeah, I said I would like to." And he was like, "I'm gonna get in touch with Seth," and I thought he meant, like at some point, or it was just sort of the standard show business, like blowing smoke,
Yeah.
But he's not like that. He's a really sincere guy. And so this was at Laugh Boston, which is a nice club. And so he said that. He said, "I'm going to get in touch with Seth." And I thought as I said, I thought he meant at some future date or possibly never. And he just sat down at the bar and wrote Seth Myers an email and said, "I'm with this kid in Boston right now. You need to put him on your show." And then he gave him my email address, and Seth gave it to the producer. And I got an email from the producer the next day that was like, "Seth wants to have you on the show. Do you want to do Seth Myers?" I was like, "Yeah."
You're like, "Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
I do."
So I was booked before they had ever seen anything.
Wow.
No tape, nothing.
Wow.
And so then all they asked for was a transcript. They didn't ask for tape. They didn't ask for anything. All I needed was a transcript for standards and practices to look at.
Because TV, like, it's meticulously planned out, like every single word.
Yeah, I mean, you can be loose with it. You can be a little loose with it. I mean, it's not like they're going to get mad about you mixing up a few words, but they need to run the gist of every joke by standards and practices, because otherwise they're going to get fined.
Right.
Not necessarily fined because it's not live, so they just wouldn't air it. But then they'd have to figure out something to put in that slot. So that was a weird situation, because so many people's experience with their first late night set is a long back and forth of notes on a tape.
Yeah.
Okay, change this, send me another tape. Change this, send me another tape. Change this, send me another tape. Like just months of back and forth.
Yeah.
I had none of that. For me, it was just a guy said put me on, and they put me on. And
you were like featuring for Just in Boston.
Yeah. And it was great. It went great. Seth was great. It's weird because, Fred Armisen is his band leader, and you're right, you're very close to him. So it's a weird feeling where and Seth is there, and so it's a weird feeling. You're telling your jokes, and obviously you're interested in whether the audience is laughing, but you're also tuned into like, oh, weird, Fred Armisen is laughing. Fred Armisen's on my left laughing, and Seth Myers is on my right laughing. Like, this is really cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool. So that was fun, and then you were talking about that transition into becoming a full-time comic. I think the biggest advice I can give to someone who wants to be a road comic, or who wants to headline on the road, or transition into headlining on the road, right? You need a couple things. Like, well, first of all, my way is not the best way. Like if I could tell you a way, it would be to have something pop, like have a podcast pop, or go viral, or do some shit and automatically become a headliner. Right. This way that I've done it, which was to be a road feature for a long time, establish connections, build up a couple decent TV credits, and then move my way up to headlining B clubs. That's the hard way. That's the way that's not as good. Like if you could choose, the way to do it is to somehow get some heat
Yeah.
some industry heat,
Right.
from whatever means, that I've never been able to get that going. But
yeah, kind of like what we were talking about beforehand, just the like having the hot thing that's like, okay, you're a headliner, people will come,
right,
people
right,
will fill this room and buy tickets. Yeah.
right, to get that somehow, that's sort of an intangible. I don't know. There's no clear cut way to know how to do to tell you how to do that, but
I think your way, at least to me, sounds like the way that you're supposed to do it. You start featuring, like, and I'm not sure if people are recommending you or if you're like putting together these connections or just blind emailing people. You put your feature on the road. People see, and then that's how you build up to headlining eventually.
Yeah, well, I think that's the way that's going to leave you best prepared to headline.
Yeah.
But I think we live in a time where that doesn't really matter that much. It's almost like some of these clubs, they're booking people that it's essentially a meet and greet. It doesn't really matter if you have an act. So like some of these YouTube personalities, they don't have acts. They can't do.
Oh yeah. Well, isn't there was reports of that one guy who's really big on YouTube, but had like never really done live, so he gets JFL and just has a complete meltdown.
Yeah, now that was
stage.
interesting because people say they sort of set that guy up. Like, from what I've been told, they knew he didn't have an act, and like they kind of set him up to fail, which is unfortunate. I don't know the full story,
right?
But,
well, tell me how you started featuring on the road.
So I would get feature work here and there just through emailing, through like I had a car, so I could take people, and so I would get limited feature work here and there, and then comic from St. Louis who lived in New York for 4 years named Greg Warren.
Yeah, I know. I remember Greg.
Greg saw me at UCB East one night and just really liked my set and was like, hey, can you do 25 minutes? And I said, yeah. And he said, are you fairly clean? And I said, yeah, because at the time I was.
Yeah.
I'm not anymore, but at the time I was. And he was like, all right, give me your email. And he took me out. I think the first place he ever took me was to the Des Moines Funny Bone. And then he just kept taking me out, and a lot of it was Funny Bones. Which is really great experience for a feature because you really develop chops for club work because the Funny Bones are huge and
like a physically big space.
They're huge. They seat a lot of people, and they sell a ton of food. And the food drops when the feature is on.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with there's 30 waiters out there just dropping food. So you gotta be, you're fighting for attention. You have to be strong. Your act has to be strong because you're kind of
You're the sacrificial lamb.
Yeah, a little bit. And also, they don't put up with bullshit there, man. They want a strong show, and if the feature's not good, the manager will email Dave Stroop, who he books the whole thing. He's in Columbus, and that's it. You'll be out. They don't fuck around. It's not like some of these clubs where you can just bring
whoever,
your buddy who's brand new to feature. Like, they want good, solid features. So, I did that for 4 or 5 years with Greg, and it was great. Now, the thing that's not great about featuring, there are a few people who make their living featuring, and the way they do that is they sell stuff.
Yeah,
they have a good T-shirt or some sort of merch. Set up. But if you don't have that, it's very difficult to make your living featuring because from what I've been told, so feature pay is $600.
Mm-hmm.
That's Thursday through Sunday.
Yeah.
And they put you up, but they don't pay travel.
Right.
So
you're essentially netting out if you get a good deal
I mean,
on travel.
if you get a good deal on travel and your headliner is someone who you hang out with, so they buy all your meals, you'll make money. Like, you make 400 if you can get a flight for $200, you know, you make $400. But, so the guys that make money featuring are the guys that drive, they link a bunch of them together, and they sell merch.
Yeah.
And so they're netting, $1,000, $1,200 a week.
Yeah.
And they're driving, and they're not. But those, it's becoming rarer and rarer.
I think so.
And what's interesting is I've been told, I don't know if this is true or not. And comedy is interesting.
It's like an ever evolving.
Well, it's also not. It's a non-union.
Yeah.
It's like I know there's been attempts to form comedians unions, but from what I've been told, I don't know if this is true, but I've been told that week feature pay has been $600 since 1995.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Which I don't know if that's true or not, but it's not enough. You can't make a living as a feature unless there's these couple select guys, and they're mostly Funny Bone guys who Funny Bone gives. We'll give them a list of weeks. We'll give them a list of 40 weeks and say, hey, what do you want?
Yeah.
And they'll take it and they'll string together tours and they'll sell merch and they can make a living. But other than that, man, the days of a middle act making a living are done. Yeah, they're gone. And there's clubs. I mean, I won't say names because I don't want to cast clubs in bad lights. But
yeah, that's not what I'm trying to.
No. But there's more and more clubs. There's more and more clubs who aren't even putting up the feature, who aren't giving lodging to the feature, and are just either using local guys or saying like you got to find someone to stay with,
right.
Which is because I think they're more and more. They're just comedy is live comedy. I think is struggling to a degree. Yeah, I think so. I mean, a lot of these clubs aren't thriving. I don't think. I know.
Just kind of getting by.
Yeah, I know the Funny Bone. I think the Funny Bones do well, but they're booking more and more of these people that are just guaranteed draws. That aren't necessarily comics.
Yeah.
Like a Steve-O, that type of
Sure.
act.
Yeah.
Which by all means I've heard Steve-O by all accounts I've heard Steve-O's a great guy.
Yeah, I've listened to him on podcasts, and he's not terrible.
No, I've heard everyone that comes to see him is usually happy because I've heard that he doesn't sell himself as a stand-up.
Yeah.
He sells himself as, I'm going to tell stories about Jackass, I'm going to do some stunts, and I'm going to, make it a little funny. And he does that, and people are happy, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Oh yeah, I don't think so either. And I have no problem with a business owner deciding to book someone that they know is going to ensure that they have a full house.
I don't either. What saddens me, I don't either. I mean,
yeah, I imagine it's a slightly different reality for you, but I
totally agree with you. They're not in it for the art. I have no qualms with them. They need to pay the rent. They need to pay a lot of people that work there. I have no problem with them booking the people that sell tickets. What bums me out is that I think there was a time when comedy clubs cultivated a trust in their customers that they were going to book funny people, and it didn't matter. So the local comedy club cultivated a trust in their local constituents that if you buy a ticket to go down to Yuck Yucks on Saturday night, it's going to be funny because it always is. And so you weren't necessarily looking at the guy's name. You weren't buying a ticket because you saw so and so on YouTube or you saw him on the podcast. You were buying a ticket because you trusted that comedy club always put on a good show. You know, and that I think those days are kind of gone, and that's a little disappointing. But I think there was a time when people really just came out to see comedy, and comedy club bookers were very took a great pride in making sure they booked a funny act every week. It didn't have to be a recognizable name. He had to be funny, or she had to be funny.
And you just knew, even if you didn't know you just exactly what you're saying. I don't know any of those names, but I know this club always books great people, so I know they're all good.
Exactly, yeah. And I think there was a time when that was how it worked. And it's just not that anymore. There's some clubs still.
Yeah, I feel like places like the Comedy Cellar. I'm speaking way out of turn. I don't even, because I am so far removed from even having a seat at that table. I'm still across the street.
Yeah.
But that I know would be a place, like if I was just a citizen of America looking for a night of a bunch of comedians, I know I would go there.
Right.
So I know what you mean. That's not the case for every club everywhere in the country anymore. But it's I agree with you, but I am glad that there is still a way that. Because this is how you're gonna. Because I imagine this is how, like, if this is your path to, like, when you are a draw, you're going to be that person who is continuously bringing that solid show every single time. It's like I always know that Brendan kills it, so I'm gonna go. So
that's the hope. Like I'm doing really well now when I'm headlining the shows. They go well. People like me. So. The hope is like, okay, I'm sharpening my skills. I'm sharpening my skill set for when that break comes, The fear is, it's not a huge fear because I don't really care that much because I'm pretty happy with what I'm doing. But the fear is that break never comes because you'd like to say, if you're funny, it'll come. Don't worry about it. But that's not necessarily true. I know plenty of guys who are very funny who just faded into obscurity, and like it happens. You can being funny isn't necessarily enough. So my sort of question that eventually I'll have to wrestle with is like, okay, if my break doesn't come, if I don't become known enough to sell some tickets and tour on a bigger level, do I want to go the route of moving to the cruise ships, cleaning up my act and doing corporates? That's kind of what happens. And those guys, the guys that do that, they make good livings. But it's sort of an admission of like, I'm never gonna break. It's the big break. That possibility is kind of gone for me. So that's a fork in the road I'll have to think about when I come to it. It's like, okay, do I want that life? Do I want to stay on the road forever as someone who's funny but no one knows? And I think the answer is probably no. At that point, I think I'd probably focus really hard on getting a writing job or something else. I don't think I want to just be 48, 50, just grinding away at B clubs and cruise ships and corporate gigs.
Because then at a certain point, if you're catering, it's almost like and how healthy a realization to have that now. Because I think there's like certain points, and I've talked about this with other with other people. There's a certain point where, like if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
Right.
What we're doing now is not that. But then I think about, to kind of bring this back, I think about those super popular YouTube channels, and if the videos they're doing are the videos they want to do and they're getting tons of views, then that's the dream. But if you're doing videos that you don't like just because you know that they'll get lots of views, I hit a point where I was like, well, then I would just rather have a regular job.
Yeah, well, and then on top of that, there is no fickler following than that's fun to say, a fickler following than tweens.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If your career is based on 13-year-old clicks getting you ad money, you could be gone in a week when they find the next thing. You know, like that audience. I mean, that happened to a lot of our contemporaries who kind of hit it big on guy code or girl code on MTV. Now, some of them had sustained success, but some of them found that audience was extraordinarily fickle, and they were there for a season, and then they did not give a shit anymore because they found the next thing they were into. You know, so you know, I think something like this, where you're obviously appealing to adults, is a lot more valuable than a YouTube channel that might be
very, again, you know, those 13 hour clicks. I think so. I think about like I think about like someone who might have a singer that might have a pop, like the song of the summer.
Right.
They might have a huge summer hit, but no one's going to see that person live 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Compared to like your favorite band, who has been your favorite band since like you were like 13 or 14.
Right.
You're gonna physically buy every album, and you're gonna go to the show and buy the T-shirt. That, I think, is, again, that means, I feel like that means more. It's like a lifestyle versus, it's like having a lifestyle band versus a pop hit.
Right.
And being a one-hit wonder.
Right. You to make a real connection, I think, is the goal. You know, to really have someone identify with you as an entertainer, for them to take in what you do and have it make them feel better about themselves. I guess that's a little like arrogant and deep to say about comedy, but I do believe it. I do think, like, you know, to really have a connection with a performer, because that's what Mitch Hedberg did to me. I would watch him and I would feel better. I don't know why. It was so funny to me, but also I'd feel like I would just feel better. I'd be in a better mood. You know, I would feel better about myself. I don't know why. Like, and I think to make that deep connection, would be tremendous. It's just the question of getting the exposure to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And seeing if you have what it takes to do that. You know?
Well, I sincerely think that you do, because again, you were like when I would see you at the Creek, you'd always make me laugh. You're always nice to me, and you would always do well. I think that would be you, and a great night out is that rare thing that is not thought about a lot, but I think it's really important. And I know exactly what you're talking about, because I just saw. I went to Caroline's and saw Dave Attell a couple weekends ago, and I laughed. Emmy Blotnick featured. I laughed because I hadn't seen her perform recently, and I left feeling lighter.
Right.
Like just like a lightness in my heart that I hadn't, compared to before the show started.
Yeah. That's what I just truly love the road, because, like, you know, for the most part, it's just people that have been working all week, you know, and they got a babysitter. They're spending money, like that. You know, it's a night out for them. It's a big deal for a lot of people to go. They're on a date, you know, like and to be able to, like, give those people like a little break from like the stress of their life.
Mm-hmm.
it just feels like a gift. You know what I mean? Like to be able to do that is just like as a job.
Yeah.
To be able to do that as your job is like you feel like Santa Claus. You know, it's like it's like it truly is. I know it gets into the territory of like Pollyanna or being hokey, but it's like it just feels so. I feel so lucky where it's like, yeah, these people just wanna laugh, you know. They just want a break from reality, you know. Everyone's lives are hard,
Yeah.
and we get to give them that, and it's like, it's just really, I just really love it, really love it,
dude. Fucking A, man. That's wonderful to hear. And you sound like you're in you sound like you're in a good place, and you sound like your head's in a good place. So
I am, yeah. We didn't even touch on. So I can come back sometime. We can go through the whole mental illness.
Oh,
business,
dude, yeah. I feel like we scratched the surface of it. So I think we're probably gonna have to do another.
All right, yeah. I'd come back anytime. This is a blast.
I would totally do that, man.
Yeah.
Dude, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. This is really fun, man.
Excellent. Thank you, man. Brendan's a great guy and a hilarious comic, and I'm glad that he was able to come over and we had that chat. I got a lot from that, both as far as like information about comedy, as well as just personal stuff too. So that was a really great chat. So I want to thank Brendan for his candid nature, and thank you guys again for listening. If you want to tell a friend about the show, we are on iTunes and Stitcher. That helps grow the show. And if you guys check the description, me and my friend comedian Sam Z are going to be doing some shows in New York City come February. We're going to be doing 2 shows at Pete's Candy Store and then 1 at Branded Saloon. Those are going to be on February 15th, February 11th, and February 18th. Again, that is February 11th, February 15th, and February 18th. 3 chances to see me and Sam Z do our solo storytelling shows. So thank you guys again for listening. Thank you for supporting me, and I really appreciate it. And I will see you guys next week between Awesome and Disaster. And check out the new version of the theme song, everybody.